just talk about some of the practicalities which is needed before AI becomes an integral part of any operations. I think the first thing is probably scale. If you have no data, you have no AI. Simple as that. Okay. The more data they have, the chances of you getting your algorithms right and getting stuff that's actually meaningful is going to be higher. But that also begs the question, a broader question: how do you get to access to all this data, and what does it mean in terms of collecting this data? And that is a concern, I think, at an individual level and also at a society level. How comfortable are you in terms of sharing this data? And also, what is the equation? What's the trade-off in terms of benefits versus privacy? Then the second, I'm going through very quickly. I'm using up my 2 minutes. Is to create any AI project or solutions, right? There's a lot of grunt work, a lot of not glamorous stuff they need to be you have to do. Data engineering, cleaning out the data so that garbage doesn't go in, because if garbage goes in, garbage comes out. And also stuff like making sure the rest of the ecosystem come along. You might have the greatest, most powerful AI algorithms, but if you're going to spray through your nose for the connectivity to get the data, then it doesn't work. So there's a lot of stuff like this that I think as practitioners, we have to consider before this becomes a reality.
People ask only 2 questions, and one is this safe or can this be hacked? And the problem is that I typically don't have answer for that, because we need to define what is hack and what is secure first. So I usually ask people, what would be the worst case scenario that could happen? So you would say this is hacked or this is not secure. So now when we talk about data, machine learning and future, typically companies define the worst case scenario that someone else gets their data. So how do we prevent that? Is basically understanding where the data is. And guess what? No one really knows. So if I look you here, you probably have roughly about over 1,000 accounts in total in different systems. Average internet user has about 90 accounts in different kind of solutions. And they will never delete one. I don't know if you have ever deleted one account in your life. Probably not. Do you even know how to do it? And if you do, does it actually get deleted? So your data is all around the internet in these small applications, and so is your company's data. And when these applications get hacked, which means data is lost, someone gets the data and is leaking it all over the internet, then something that we call cyber exposure happens. So your company gets exposed, your employees get exposed, and this data can be used against you or as a preparation for future hacking. So this is when the machine learning jumps in. So I've been consulting companies for over 10 years, so we sort of understood quite quickly what would be the worst case scenario for companies, how they get hacked. So the next question was, how do we get this information out of internet? So we started focusing on dark web and deep web, places where hackers talk openly about where they're going to hack and where they leak information. So now that we knew what kind of information would be harmful for companies, we can actually use machine learning to train the machine learning algorithms to identify this kind of information.
You may have used the Parking.SG app to pay for your coupons. That was built by my team. We've done other things like an application called Beeline, which crowdsources bus routes, which Grab Shuttle is now using. And I think a couple of years ago, we also solved the problem of the rogue train when the Circle Line trains went down, and a couple of my data scientists were able to isolate the problem using data in half a day, when essentially 30 train engineers couldn't solve it for about 3 or 4 months, which essentially points to the power of using data and using evidence to make decisions. My take on AI, I think you have to trace the lineage of these marketing terms. Over the couple of years when I first started in this space, it was called business analytics, kind of like Excel and dashboards. The term big data, data science came up, and then now artificial intelligence, of which machine learning and deep learning is a subset. So you hear all these jargon, and I think what's common in a lot of these technologies and these terms, I think, is a fundamentally data-driven way of solving problems. So you look at the data, it's inherently empirical and deductive, and you're trying to allow algorithms and machines to learn from the data to make decisions. It's not something where some expert comes in and hard codes a set of steps. if this, do that, right? That's a traditional way of hard coding and programming. And the whole idea behind data science and machine learning is you look at the data first. And I think that's what excites me about data. And I think the problem with artificial intelligence now is that it refers to too many things. It's become a marketing term that's very hard to pin down. This feels a multidisciplinary area, right? You need people in the business who understand the strategy, understand what kind of problems are meaningful to solve and where you've got data. You need guys who understand algorithms to be able to write the code to find pattern discoveries or build the machine learning algorithms. And then you need the software engineers to deploy that into production so that they run reliably and they don't fail, or if they fail, they recover in an elegant way. So I see this also as an inherently kind of multidisciplinary approach.
I specialize in intellectual property, technology, and privacy law. And this is a really interesting area for many, many reasons, but I think AI in particular sort of upends how we think about liability from a legal perspective. Traditionally, if you purchased a good or a service and it didn't perform the way you expected, you could raise issues of product liability, you could seek damages if there was an unfavorable outcome. But what happens when you have an AI system that you make decisions on, but it leads you to an outcome that isn't favorable? And what happens when that AI system has reached a level of sophistication that its developers don't quite understand the processes by which the outcome was reached? Who then is liable? And that's a question which at present still remains unresolved. But there are a number of approaches that are being put forward on how to deal with this. So this is still a developing area of law, and it'll be quite exciting to follow.
How you use technology, right? How you use machine learning or how to use tools. I always tell people machine learning algorithms are just transformations of matrices of numbers. It's just mathematics or statistics. Like, why are we suddenly so bothered about a bit of mathematics or calculations? And I think it becomes very scary when you defer or you kind of delegate the decision making to the machine without humans in the loop. Because one way to use recommendations from the machine is to say, that's just another input into my human decision making. So a doctor looks at a diagnosis and machine learning helps to make a recommendation, and the doctor looks at it, he weights it, but then it passes through a human filter before a decision is made. Now, when I think you take the human out of the loop, and when you take this intelligence and you run it in actual systems, autonomous vehicles, even autopilot in a car, I mean, even ABS brakes in your current car that you drive, or the airplane that someone's just taken where most of the flying is not done by the pilot but the autopilot. These are areas where it gets dangerous, but we all take flights. Some flights, there are accidents, but human beings cope with that.
So it's about building your tolerance and your trust in the machine, right, over time.
Yeah, if we set the first question again in the context of trust, I think what's scary about the whole phenomenon here is that there's a lot of things that are not visible, they are not transparent to people. So I get a lot of calls from people that I was chatting with my friend about something, and then Facebook is now giving me advertisements about it, and and Facebook never knew about our discussion, so the phone must be listening to me. And when I check the browser history, they always has some links already that they have been surfing about some specific travel destination and so on. So I guess that what's the scary part is if there's a recommendation, it doesn't say that because you liked Aruba, that's why we show you this thing. And whereas when you have a trust with people, they might be angry or happy or like you or hate you depending on your history with them. So maybe you have your family has 100 years of history like Italian mafia has with other mafias, and then that's why they get deals done quickly. But at least they know because it's shared in the families that this is how we operate, versus this algorithm that doesn't reveal you anything.
Yeah.